Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Public Works for today, Monday, July 10th, 2017.
Commissioners Rivas, Repenning, James, Davis, and Jacinto are present. President James, we have a quorum. May we start with Bureau introductions, beginning with Bureau of Street Services.
Tim's going to set up the room for us as well. Good morning, Mr. Tyson.
Good morning, Tim Tyson, Bureau. Is this on? Can you hear me? Tim Tyson, Bureau of Street Services.
Good morning, Ruben Flamenco, Bureau of Street Lighting.
Good morning, Khalil Garderos, Bureau of Sanitation.
Good morning, Shirley Lau, Bureau of Engineering.
Good morning, Chris Smith, Bureau of Contract Administration.
Good morning, Ted Jordan, Public Works General Counsel.
Good morning, Raul Mendoza, Assistant Executive Officer. President James, we do not have any speaker cards under the Neighborhood Council commentary, no speaker cards under the public comment. We do have one speaker card on item number 6.
Okay, we'll close general public comment as well as the Neighborhood Council category of commentary. A couple of housekeeping items. Agenda item number 8 has been requested to be withdrawn by the Bureau. Mr. Ledoux, could I talk to you for just a moment on number 8? Recognizing that number 8 is going to be withdrawn, this was an AT&T issue, above ground facility issue?
Yes, it was one of their high-speed internet cabinets they were placing in a residential area.
Okay, and they determined that they will they're still going to provide the service even though they're withdrawing this application, correct?
That's correct. I have an email from John Johnson, who's the construction and engineering manager for them, and they figured out another way to do it.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was good to learn. Thank you. So number 8 will be withdrawn. Agenda item number 13, we will continue to Friday, August 18th. That's an update on the sidewalk repair program. Agenda item number 13 will be continued to Friday, August 18th. Agenda item number 12 is a release of a stop notice for PCI. PCI transmitting the release of a stop notice in the amount of $14,622.41 for furnishing striping and pavement markings in connection with the Los Angeles Police Department Police Academy Replacement Training Facility Project. The contractor is Kemp Brothers Construction, Incorporated. Is there a second to my motion that we receive agenda item number 12 forthwith? By Commissioner Repenning, any objection? Without objection, we will receive agenda item number 12 forthwith. Agenda item number 1, task order solicitation number 53 from SOMAS Development Services Procedure Manual Update and B Permit Plan Check Services, recommending that the board authorize the city engineer to issue the task to SOMAS from the pre-qualified on-call wastewater and environmental engineering services consultants list to prepare a fee study and provide documentation, training material, and training classes for the development services program, and provide staff augmentation for DSP district offices as stated in task order solicitation number 53 with the budget authority of $2,150,000 from the Engineering and Equipment Trust Fund. We have Randy Price and Jim Wu on agenda item number 1. Mr. Price, welcome back.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. My name is Randy Price. I'm with the Bureau of Engineering, and I'm here for item number 1. The request for authority to issue the task force solicitation number 53 to SOMAS, contract number 120702 from the pre-qualified on-call consultant list to provide development services procedural manual update and B permit plan check services. This particular task order was, the intent is to provide services which include developing a fee study for all of the fees and charges within the development services program, to compile a development services procedural manual and develop a training manual for all the staff in the development services program, to develop a procedural manual for the land development program, as well as training modules for land development staff. This will also provide outside services to analyze our call handling abilities at the district offices, as well as how we respond to all of our customers, both in terms of the customers that come to the counter and the customers that email staff and for personal calls. The call handling will recommend the implementation of technology to improve the way that we respond to and meet and reach out to our customers. They will also do an in-depth analysis of the customer service staff and develop customized training based upon the staff needs to train all of our staff in dealing with the public and all the development services and private development staff. They'll also provide training to all staff in the development services program on the different types of services that we provide. So there will be a number of general trainings that are provided. One, an overall training for all staff, then specialized training for each type of service and the people that specialize in that service. So A permit, people that issue A permits will get a specialized training, B permit people also. We'll also be providing subdivision map act training for all the people in the private development program that deal with land issues and tract maps and parcel maps and those types of activities. Also, a component of this is staff augmentation. We have a lot of people retiring from the Bureau of Engineering, and we have a lot of people, we're losing staff in the development services program at a fairly rapid rate. And so we want a mechanism where we can bring in staff augmentation to help at times in some of the district offices right now. So the overall objective of this particular task order is a part of a broader program that we in the development services program are initiating to improve services and adopt new technology and upgrade the skills, both technical and in terms of personal interaction for all the staff within the program. This is part of our succession plan with the Bureau aging relatively quickly and losing staff. Then we want a robust training program in place with good documentation so that as new and younger staff come on board, all of the resources they need will be available so that they can provide the type of services that we expect to provide. The information that we develop as a part of this program will be available online to the public also. So this should provide more transparency and help for the public that use these services and want to know, why do we have to do this? You know, what are the requirements for getting this particular permit? All this information will be made available online to the public. This will help us standardize the operations across all the district offices. So all the different individuals that have been working throughout the city and all of our different offices in the Valley, West LA, down the harbor, and here in Central, will be working off the same document, the same information, the same forms, the same requirements, the same submittal requirements. So it should help standardize to make things a little bit easier for the customers. They know what to expect when they come to the office. This particular program and a part of the overall process will incorporate new technology into both our permitting process and the tools that are available for staff to use in the office. We expect that through this process, the interviews and the training, that we will increase staff knowledge and expertise, that it will improve staff competency and efficiency, and out of this we'll develop a sustainable training program that will help us going forward. As I said, this is part of an overall process to improve many of the services that we provide, and that includes both all of the training and manual activities of this particular task order. Also, a part of this, we have a Fuse Fellow that is working with us to make recommendations that will be implemented in the program to improve the B permitting process. And we're working with the Department of Building and Safety to implement new technology for electronic plan processing, and that should help with the approval process for B permits and the other permits that are issued within the Bureau. That's my general explanation. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Commissioner Cinto?
Thank you, President James. Randy, good to see you again.
Hi, Commissioner.
Really excited to see this. On the broader thing, on the broader sort of context, this toss, this award really speaks to the Mayor Eric Garcetti's agenda of a better run city. How do we build LA together? Back to basics, or now beyond basics. And so when we make a significant investment in the Development Services Program, which is working to improve customer service, and really we go back a couple of years to listening to industry and what developers and what people were saying about working with our permitting, our A permits, our B permits, and that whole thing. We listened to it.
Right.
And we internalize that, and this is exactly what we're doing in terms of a better experience, a better, more sustained development in our city. So I subscribe to all the different things, the fee study, the training program, the succession planning, because all these things are right on in terms of the aging out, the transition of our workforce. We need to institutionalize our procedures and make them better so that we can pass them on, so we can be all on the same page in terms of new staff. So there's a lot of great things about this. I wholeheartedly support it, and I'm glad to see that we're doing this, Randy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cinto. Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, I also support the effort to help to improve information we need to move to the next level and to be able to accommodate the transition that we all will be enduring as people get older and retire. Now, this work will deal with the performance of individuals who are working with us. What about the overall organizational goals? Is this data related to our organizational goals? I know we're going to assess what our performance is, and we're going to be able to tell what the gap analysis is, hopefully between our organizational goals and then our individual performance. Is that pretty?
Yes, we have a number of things that are occurring, Commissioner. One, in the upcoming budget, there were additional positions and new positions related specifically to the B permit, where we have B permit case manager. So we're looking at the organizational structure itself as well as the individual performance of people under the current structure. And we do expect changes, both organizationally and in the way that we do that work. As we all know, particularly those of us that are older and nearing retirement, that when young people come in and young engineers that we hire, they have a different skill set. They're more accustomed to using technology to help them do their job. And so as we bring in more technology, as we upgrade our technology and make available the tools that are out there for these young engineers to do their work and reorganize our structure to really help them succeed through the B permit case management process, the implementation of electronic plan processing, electronic signatures. We're working with Bluebeam Corporation for their plan check software, and working with Building and Safety to implement the systems that they're implementing currently now, both in terms of the portal that will be available to the public and the back-end tools that will be used by staff to provide those services. All of those things will help us to provide better service and develop and structure our organization in the manner that better takes advantage of those tools and the more decentralized approach that we can take, especially if people are applying online.
Sure.
It's not necessary that the person that's doing the plan checking, is sitting in Central. They could be sitting elsewhere, and getting the other departments online on board with that also.
Sure.
DOT, street lightings, street services, Con Ed, all the different offices we have been working with and reaching out to with those things will all form that, help restructure that organization.
Yes, sir. And I support it. I think that once we know what our organizational goal is, and we do, and then once we are able to assess the individual performance and the shortfall between our performance as it meets our goals,
yes,
I think what we will get from this will be specific instructions in terms of how much money and resources we need to be able to meet the shortfall and the gap analysis in
yes,
our
exactly.
department. And so be able to know that budget will be critically important
Right.
in terms of how we move forward financially.
Right. There's a, for example, we don't know that it's hard for us to tell, do we have enough inspectors to inspect the work the permits that are coming out? And it's hard for us to tell that unless we do an analysis and find out,
That's correct.
do we need more staff out there in the field doing this type of thing?
And also we need to know how much it costs
Right.
for us to increase the individual performance to the level demanded by the organizational goal.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to really get the specificity that we need to have financially without a true assessment. So I support this because of that, as opposed to just kind of whistling in the wind and hoping that we will get it by the seat of our pants, which too often is what we do in management. So I think that this is critically important, and I support it for that reason.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Rivas?
No, I think this is a great way to prepare, like you said, for the future workforce. Like you said, young engineers want to use technology, and also a great way to prepare for a transfer of knowledge, right? From a lot of you have been here for years, and you just know the processes of these permits and other within development services. Do you know how long this process that's defined in the TOS will take? Is there a timeline?
We have a tentative schedule to complete this about 18 months. Some of the tasks will be completed before then. Obviously, once this is approved and we really get going, the call handling and some of the stuff will be done in parallel, of course. So the call handling, some of the training and all that stuff, we hope will occur, sometime this summer, later this summer, and certainly be completed before the fall. The fee study has already started, and we have not gotten the results from that yet. We're hoping to get the results. We're doing the fee study for the last 2 fiscal years, and then we want to do a more in-depth study to look at, we sort of look at the fee study, how much we collected and how much we spent, but there's another element to it is really, are we doing the work that we really should be doing in terms of, all the inspection, all the plan check that needs to be done. So there's a little more in-depth of analysis that we want to do later, but we'll get preliminary results from the fee study pretty quickly. The procedure manuals, the land development manual, I think will be completed within the next, 6 to 9 months with training there. The other activities, there are, 30 or so different services that we collect fees for or that we charge actual costs to perform those services. And it will take, some of them are very complicated. It'll take much longer to do those. Some of them are, should be fairly quickly. But overall, we're looking at 18 months to complete this whole process where everyone will have been trained, the manual will have been developed, and the process really in place. And again, this is occurring alongside other activities that are not part of this task, which also we're very excited about. So
then some of the recommendations that potentially will result out of these studies could be implemented even before the 18 months.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
The TOS is completed, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rivas. Randy, just the process, I know that out of the 21 firms or whatever, we ended up with only one proposal, which was Somas. I understand from the briefing that the Bureau is happy with the proposal, which is a good thing since we only got one. How many showed up at the pre-proposal meeting? Were there 4 of them?
There were, yes, I think there were 4 that showed up at the pre-proposal meeting. I did reach out to the members that attended to ask them, basically, why did you submit a proposal? And I have not heard back from them. I emailed them after Jim told me you'd ask a question, raise some concerns about it. But I haven't heard back. I think generally, this task order is a little bit different from the typical ones that come out of the wastewater pre-qualified on-call list, which are typically design or staff augmentation. They're usually very technical, engineering-oriented tasks. This particular task is sort of hits upon that subject that every engineer hated, which was technical writing. And so I think it was just within the firms that did come to the pre-proposal meeting, that after going through our expectations and going through in detail what we were looking for out of this task, that a number of them just felt that it wasn't their cup of tea, I guess. So.
Okay. Anything further? Commissioner Santos made a motion that we adopt agenda item number 1, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any objection? With that objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 1. Any issue sending number 1 forthwith? We will send number 1 forthwith. Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, nice tie today, Mr. Price. Agenda item number 2. It's an inside joke there. Request for authority to issue the task for solicitation number 32 to David Evans and Associates, DEA. Contract number C-115-233 from the pre-qualified on-call consultants list to provide design services for the 2nd Street Tunnel Rehabilitation Project, work order number E1908056. Recommendation, recognizing that the board authorized the city engineer to issue the task to DEA, and the task order has a budget authority of $310,000, which includes contingency on number 2, Gene Edwards.
Good
Mr.
morning, Gene Edwards.
How are you, sir?
Doing pretty good, thanks. I'm recovering from shoulder surgery.
Okay.
But everything's good.
Just wanted to make sure nothing happened on your way in this morning.
No, I'm good.
All right. All right. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're recovering well. So go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Gene Edwards, Bureau of Engineering. The 2nd Street Tunnel downtown is between Hill Street and Figueroa Street. It's approximately a third of a mile. Has two-way traffic, as well as bike lanes and pedestrian sidewalks. It's a relatively iconic tunnel in the history of Los Angeles. It's known for its bright white ceramic tiles, which were imported from Germany back in the 20s. And it's often seen in many of the movies in the entertainment industry. As some of you may remember, June before last, the City Council directed the Bureau of Engineering to remove the loose and falling tiles from the 93-year-old tunnel. And this is because the falling tiles were a threat to the bicyclists and the pedestrians. At that time, the Bureau of Engineering mobilized 2 emergency on-call contractors, and they worked from opposite sides of the tunnel and removed the loose tiles and cleaned up the tunnel, and it was reopened in a matter of days. Then last April, the City Council directed the Bureau of Engineering to solicit proposals from consultants to provide a scope and cost for necessary long-term repairs, including a detailed evaluation and study by experts in tunnel design and construction. In response to this solicitation, we solicited all 10 of the consultants on the pre-qualified on-call list of civil engineering consultants, and received 3 proposals. The proposals were evaluated on methods of repair and materials, and part of the scope of the task would be to provide a preliminary study and a final study, including bidding documents for contractors to bid on. After selection of DEA as the preferred consultant, the Bureau of Engineering negotiated the base task scope and costs for a final task and budget in the amount of $310,000, which includes a 12.5% contingency needed for unforeseen conditions that may require additional study and design. DEA, let me start over. The suggested minority business enterprise and women business enterprise participation levels for this on-call contract is 12% and 2%, respectively. DEA will be providing or pledges to provide 6% and 0%, respectively. And also the Public Works Office of Accounting has verified that $310,000 is available for this task order as appropriated by City Council. And therefore, we recommend that the board authorize the city engineer to issue this task order 32 to DEA consultants in the amount of $310,000, which includes contingency. That concludes my report.
Any questions on agenda item number 2? I don't have any questions from agenda item number 2. Commissioner Cinto, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Gene. Feel better. The study is going to prescribe a longer-term course for preservation, from in terms of the tunnel in the future too.
Correct.
We have no idea about the magnitude and scope of how much that might be in the future.
You mean the
So the
cost? The cost of repairs? The various consultants and experts had quoted a cost per foot, and it gets quite expensive, but it will be in the millions, if not tens of millions. We don't know. The tunnel is very old, and it was originally designed with a back drain, which collects water behind the tunnel structure, and then pipes it to the inside of the structure and down through drains. And we suspect that these drains are not performing, but there still is infiltration of water occurring. And so the consultants would be looking at, first they would look at the damage that is visible, and then they would determine where to look for damage that is not visible. They will take samples of the material, such as the concrete liner, by coring, and determine if they're going to recommend a new way of providing a watertight structure, or somehow reestablishing or creating new drains to relieve the water that is delaminating the tiles. So it really depends how things progress.
All right. So it's a very involved process.
It is
because
very involved,
that drainage, and whatever happens, the results of the study are going to have a proposal that's the most efficient and long.
Correct. In their preliminary report, they will provide recommendations and alternatives, and the Bureau of Engineering senior staff will evaluate and select the final most appropriate method of repair.
Very good. Well, let's take care of that tunnel. Yeah. Thanks, Gene.
Thank you, Commissioner Cinto. Commissioner Davis.
Gene, I wanted to ask, in terms of economic opportunity, is there any vision as it relates to task orders, or this one in particular, as far as MBE, WBE, DBE is concerned? Is there any vision that we have for those in this work?
For this particular task order?
Either this and in general, as it relates to task orders. Well, let's talk about this one, since this is what you're presenting.
Right. In general, most task orders provide the opportunity for full participation of the minimum levels. In this case, being that we don't have many tunnels in the city of Los Angeles, and we don't have that expertise. Right. We're looking for the best qualified engineers to do this job. And therefore our selection, our opportunities for selection were limited.
Anything further? I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 2, seconded by Commissioner Cinto. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 2. Any issue sending number 2 forthwith? Thank you, Gene. We'll send number 2 forthwith. Speedy recovery, sir. Is there a second to my motion that we approve the meeting minutes from the meeting of Wednesday, June 14, 2017, by Commissioner Repenning? Any objection? Without objection, we'll approve those meeting minutes. Mr. Tyson, are you ready for number 6? Okay, then let me call number 6. Council District 14 requested tree removal East Side Active Transportation Linkages Phase 2 project, recommending that the board find that the tree removal classifies as operation, repair, maintenance, or minor alteration of existing street, sidewalk, and gutter involving negligible or no expansion of use beyond that previously existing and does not involve the removal of a scenic resource. Number 2, that the action is exempt under Article 3, Section 1, Class 1, Category 3, existing facilities, sidewalk repair, or maintenance of the City of Los Angeles Environmental Quality Act guidelines from 2002, and 3, that none of the exceptions to the use of a categorical exemption as set forth in Section 153.00.2 of the state CEQA guidelines apply, and number 2, review and approve this tree removal permit request for 77 trees of various species for the reconstruction of off-grade sidewalks and street improvements. Tree replacements are required. We have a couple of speaker cards. Mr. Tyson, we'll have you summarize the project. We'll go to the speaker cards, and then you can address any additional issues they raise. As you start, my recollection, because 77 trees is a lot of trees, so I know you'll talk about the replacement. But you also might add in your presentation, my recollection from a public event that was held around this with various stakeholders recently, this is in Council District 14 if I didn't say it, is that there was an effort made to save a number of trees as well, so you can talk about the number of trees in the project that were able to be saved. Mr. Tyson, go ahead.
President James, Commissioners, Bureau Representatives, City Attorney, and Executive Officer. The Bureau of Street Services are proposing to repair defective sidewalks and perform other related street improvements as part of the Active Transportation Program. The purpose of this project is to provide pedestrian improvements to north-south linkage streets for the Metro Gold Line light rail on First Street and is funded through the ATP and matching funds. The ATP being the Active Transportation Program. The scope of the project includes sidewalk repair and improvements along 4 streets, Boyle Street, State Street, Lewis Street, and Soto Street from Cesar Chavez Avenue to 4th Street. The current condition of the sidewalks is not conducive to existing and increased pedestrian traffic generated by the nearby metro stations. This project complements the Metro Measure R and Metro Call project funded improvements along 1st Street from the 101 freeway to Concord Street in Boyle Heights and will provide sidewalk reconstruction while enhancing new transit opportunities. A Bureau of Street Services arborist performed a site inspection on April 13th and 19th, 2017 and identified 77 street trees of various species and at various locations within the project limits. The trees are growing throughout the 100 through 400 blocks of North Boyle Street, State Street, Lewis Street, and the 100 through 300 blocks of South Boyle Street, State Street, St. Louis Street, and Soto Street. The affected street trees are 8 silk oak, 8 flame trees, 6 Indian laurel fig trees, and 6 carrotwood trees, 5 Brisbane box, and other various tree species. The species I just listed are of the larger species that are in the area. And I just want to point out that in this grid, I'll call it, of the 4 streets, after we did our inspections a few times to lessen the severity of the number of trees that would need to be removed, this is what we did. We came up with, on Boyle Street, there's actually 60 trees that are going to remain on that street and only 22 removals are being requested. On State Street, there are 11 trees that will be remaining in place and 10 that we are requesting for permits to remove.
Would you repeat that on State?
State has 11 trees that will remain and 10 that will be required for removal.
All right.
So you have 21 street trees on the street right now. On St. Louis Street, we have 25 trees that will be requested for removal and 12 trees will be remaining. On Soto Street, there are 20 trees to be removed and 22 trees to remain. So we're asking for 77 trees to be removed and there are 105 trees that will remain. So you can see that we've done our due diligence and we want to keep as many trees that are appropriate for saving due to their condition or whatever the situation might be. Several of the trees are creating defective conditions to the sidewalks, beginning to encroach into the curb and gutter. They possess poor branch structure and are in very poor health. The trees to be removed measure on average approximately 10 to 40 inches in diameter by 15 to 70 feet in height and are growing in 3 to 4 foot wide parkway or tree wells. The tree removals will also be required at bus stops where landings and transit users, including those on wheelchairs, are impeded by trees. Sidewalk reconstruction and project scope will require removal of some of these trees. I also put a package together. Put into the package for photos of them so you can see them.
Tim, these repairs that are funded by the ATP, as you described, we get credit. I mean, I know the answer to this, but I want to confirm it for the record. We get credit in the Willett settlement for these sidewalk repairs, do we not?
Correct.
Okay.
All these are part, after the Willett settlement settled and we're doing all this sidewalk repair, this will be parts of the replacement of sidewalks. It's all good. Unfortunately, there's some trees that we'll need to remove, but the condition that they are in at this time would represent they need removed. I'll continue. The subject tree removals were physically posted on March 1st, 2017. Mr. Nate Hayward with Council District 14 was informed of the tree removals, and the Bureau of Street Services with Council District 14 has held community meetings. Proposed tree removals were also placed on the Bureau of Street Services tree removal notification system, and the Community Forest Advisory Committee was also advised. The tree removals will be done in phases, the sequence of which will be coordinated with the council office, and a significant amount of time is needed to complete tree removals. There will be 200 24-inch box-sized trees to be planted as replacements exceeding the city's 2-to-1 replacement goal. So after the trees are planted, I believe that comes up with 305 trees will be in the area. I think I said there was 105. Yeah, 305 trees will actually be in the area. You'll be replanting 200 and 105 will be remaining, so you'll have a significant more amount of trees. And the trees that are being planted will be watered by the Bureau for 3 years or until established, and will be much better structured trees that given care and taking care of them in the next 3 years and giving them more space to grow. We'll have better trees than are there currently.
Thank you. If you have questions for Mr. Tyson before we go to the speakers, Commissioner Repenning? Oh, okay. She'll wait for the speakers. Commissioner Rivas?
I just had a quick question about the trees that will be planted. Sometimes trees go to the nursery, to your nursery, the Bureau of Street Services nursery instead. Is there space to plant, was it 200 trees that will?
Yes.
So, and they will be planted in that area?
Yes.
Okay.
As we do one street, we'll plant that street after it's done before they go to the next street.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Rivas. Thank you, Mr. Tyson. We'll go on the order in which these cards came in. Joaquin Castellanos? Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Joaquin Castellanos. I'm a homeowner property on the Boyle Heights area, and I'm here just to just heard what he presented to save some of the trees. Some of the trees are beautiful. They have for many years been there, and we don't want to lose it. You know, we just want it to be green and in a proper maintenance. My other concern is when they plant the trees, the maintenance that they provide is not enough, because on phase one along First Street, they did replace a lot of trees. Some of the trees are gone. Some of the trees are growing in a bended. So there's no way, when I call to this council office, there's no good response. So when we plant trees, it needs maintenance. They need someone to go and look at it, that they're growing properly and in a good way, and they're not. So my concern is to review phase one and see how the trees are growing, how good care they are provided, and move forward with phase two. And I would like congratulate you guys for saving some of the trees along Boyle Street. Boyle Street is one of the historic streets in Boyle Heights, and it has a beautiful trees that they should be preserved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castellanos. Mr. Tyson? Regarding a couple of the issues raised by our prior speakers. So I remember being there for, there was a pretty large community gathering at the groundbreaking and spoke to some of the community members that felt like this is a long time coming in a number of ways. Accessibility, access to transit, an opportunity to cure some of the things that have, the wearing on infrastructure that's happened over time. Some of the photos describe that very clearly. But a couple of the issues raised for the trees that I know a number of the trees were able to be saved, maybe were able to stay.
Correct.
The trees that have to go, was the determination made that there's just for every one of those that there is no way that this project can be done to meet the safety standards and the ADA standards that we have to meet and keep those trees, thus the number that are being removed?
That's correct. In order to do two-sided root pruning on a lot of the larger trees, we can't allow that for safety of the public. The curbs are missing completely. The sidewalks are pretty elevated in some areas around the bigger trees. The smaller trees that are being removed are because of the condition of the tree, and the actual replacement tree will be better, and in a short period of time will be replacing the ones that are actually being removed that are substandard, that are small. Now, he did ask about phase one where some of the trees are missing. Well, some of the trees were pulled out. There was vandalism that took place, these kind of a thing, and we're working on replanting those trees right now currently. So,
all right. What about the maintenance issue that he raised as well?
well, the maintenance of the trees, we water the trees for 3 to 4 years or 5, whatever it takes to get them established. And then after that, or as soon as they're in the ground, the maintenance of the trees is our responsibility. So the trees get trimmed on our rotational cycle, what our budget allows. But we could go out and we could check these out at 3 to 4 years for structure and form for trimming small trees, and if there's anything needed, that could be done. But usually you don't trim small trees. You let them grow until they get much larger before you want to trim them.
Understood, but I think the largest concern initially on maintenance is the watering of the trees.
And that will be done by the Bureau.
All right. Any other questions before we go to the next speaker? Thank you, sir. Robert Barkaloff?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
I live on Boyle Avenue. I've grown up in the city and born in the city. The trees that are on Boyle Avenue between 1st and 4th, they're very large trees. They're not unhealthy at all. They're extremely robust. Not only that, they lie right on the very precipice of the cliff on the heights in Boyle. The area previously, it's a historical area previously known as El Paredón Blanco, which means the White Cliffs, during the Spanish and the Mexican era. Those trees are very old, very, very old. I don't know what kind they are, but they're also very tall. And because of the geography of the area, the wind comes up and sweeps up there, and it creates a resource for raptors, hawks in particular. So I see hawks coming there and hunting and using those trees from which to fly up. And it's an area that's central to the city. I don't know if the environmental impact report took this into account, that it was not only at the edge, but at the point where, I forgot what the term is when there's hot air that circulates up. Because the raptors, they can't fly up like normal birds. They have to, if they cannot gain elevation from a thermal, they will lose that area as a hunting or living ground. I don't know what care or what importance the city has on that, but I will point out that there was a large, very, very large tree that was symbolic of the city. It was known as El Aliso, and the Mayor Brewery was built around it, which is now, I'm sorry, I guess that's the time. But there's also the Compton tree where the eagle tree was, and that's gone too. And these trees are beautiful and very tall, and they may be serving an environmental reason that I really hope they can be saved. I'm against the cutting down of the trees. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Any
sir.
questions?
Not for you, sir. I have some questions for Mr. Tyson. So, Mr. Tyson, regarding some of the, again, I kind of go back to the same question that I talked to you about a moment ago. This is a painful part of transit improvements and a sidewalk repair program when we have to meet ADA requirements under a federal law. Some of these trees are, as Mr. Barklow said, they're historic. And Mr. Lorenzen was a master at coming in and just an expert at describing the arc of life of some of these trees. And some of these trees are historic, but occasionally historic trees reach the end of the arc of life and they are no longer safe for a community, particularly when you have winds and other things that can affect the health of a tree, such that even an old historic tree has to be removed because of pedestrian safety. And there have been stories we have in this season. Your bureau worked with a number of trees down and we're dealing with kids that were hit. At least one kid on a tree that wasn't as healthy as it should have been and was, was not removed. So, what kind of assessment does the Bureau do when you are looking at some of these old, beautiful, environmentally beneficial historic trees?
Right. Commissioner James, there's a stretch of 28 silk oak trees that are called grevillea. And out of that 28 trees, which is what the constituent was referring to, only 8 are being removed. And those 8 are being removed because, like you were talking about trees that fail without anything happening around them, we can't allow someone to go in and root prune 2 sides of these trees to replace the curb and the sidewalk because some of them have expanded so much at the base that you'd be cutting into the base of the tree.
And so the tree would no longer be steady?
That's correct. The risk of failure is substantial, and we don't want to take and put anybody in harm's way. So the only time we could say it's okay to allow root pruning to a tree is under very crucial looking at what's going on and how much root loss there may be and how tall the tree is, what's the wind exposure to the trees. All these different things have to be looked at. And we do an assessment. It's called a tree risk assessment for each tree individually, because these trees don't grow together per se under the ground and the roots all joined. They stand alone. Each tree is itself its own identity, even though there's many of them down the street. So they don't have any ability of another tree holding on to its roots through its roots being joined together underground. So as soon as you cut 2 sides of the roots on a tree like this, you basically only have 2 sides in the quadrants, if you could imagine 4 quadrants, holding that tree. And once you cut into roots of trees, you open them up for diseases and things like that to go in quite rapidly. So the silk oaks are, they're tall. There's 8 that need to be removed. There's going to be 20 that will remain, and the 8 that will be removed will be replaced on a 2-to-1 basis.
The determination you just described is made by an arborist?
That's correct.
And if you create susceptibility for a tree to disease, does that endanger the rest of the canopy in the area to the same disease?
Well, what can happen is through a root disease getting into the bottom of the tree, it can cause the tree, of course, to decline, and then other things can come into the area because that tree is stressed out and then infect other trees.
Commissioner Penning.
Hi, Tim. Looking through these documents, I have the impression that this is a project where the trees have been looked at one by one, to determine whether they can be saved or whether they need to be removed.
And more than once.
Do you feel that you've had the resources at the Bureau to adequately spend the time to really look at each one, whether there is an option of saving it?
Absolutely.
Has the council office been involved in this project?
I phoned Mr. Nate Hayward this morning to see if he might be attending, but the council office made no pushback on it. They're all for the project as far as I'm under that understanding.
Okay, but they haven't been involved in designating the locations.
As far as designated.
They have been. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, the council office has been involved with all the way from the very beginning.
Okay, okay.
Walked through all the times we went out there. There was more than, 2 times that they went out and had a meeting with the council and all the neighborhood and walked the trees.
Okay. So there's been a fair amount of public, community, and council office input into this overall project.
Absolutely.
And we are replacing the trees at, it sounds like at about 2.5 to 1. That's
It's
above our
200 trees versus 144, whatever it might be, 77 times 2, 154. So
okay.
we're replacing more than what's actually the 2 to 1.
Okay, I hear the concerns of the community members, and I think that we all feel the loss of trees that are really part of the fabric of a neighborhood. In this case, that's part of what's happening. But the other part of what's happening is that we're making permanent infrastructure repairs that will last hopefully many generations to come. Right. We're planning for each tree we're moving more than 2 back into the community that will grow and be part of the future fabric.
And we're saving a number of trees, 105 trees. It's
and
not
saving the trees that we can.
which is a good thing.
Okay, well, you have my support on this one, and I appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Penny. Commissioner Davis.
I just wanted to ask, you said that these were called rabilla trees, basically, that are being removed?
Silk oak or grevillea.
Grevillea.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the environmental impact, is there an environmental impact report that goes into this kind of a process or not really?
Yeah, there's the CEQA finding that we're the lead agency and it was considered to be exempt.
Is a part of the CEQA requirement or effort, does it include habitats for animals that
When you look at that, yes, but I mean, generally speaking, the way the Fish and Game Code works, 3503 and 3503.5, is during the months of January 1st to June 30th for birds of prey, you have to inspect the trees thoroughly before you go or enter the trees to do any work. It's not like you can't work on the trees. You have to be responsible and you have to inspect them and trees next to each other. And if there is something found, then you don't touch it, you leave it, and you can still work on the other trees. It's one of the things where we have to inspect the trees prior to.
Do we have a plan in terms of the habitat, in terms of when we do this work? Do we have to have a plan, for example, if there's one tree where the habitat, yet in fact, we know that the tree risk assessment perhaps takes precedence over the whole habitat thing because, of course, you would have a risk for citizens, if a tree falls and kills a person because we saved a hawk. That's one thing. But here's my question. Do we have to have a plan for habitat when we go through this process? I'm trying to better understand myself in terms of the things we have to be confronted with when we do this work.
Right.
When we get a CEQA assessment from this process, do we or are we required to have a plan for habitat? So, for example, if we remove one tree, do we know that then the habitat maybe will go to the tree next to it or something like that, or how does that work?
Well, you have to inspect the trees actually 3 days prior and then the day of and all this. This is kind of like, goes back to the white oak tree that we removed, the big Aleppo pines that had to come out. I personally went out and did the inspection of this very large tree because of that concern. But all of our crews know that these are the standards. We keep an eye on that. There's different time frames that they're nesting, and during that time frame, you don't touch the tree. So we wouldn't root prune the tree, we would just leave it stand until the nesting period's over, and then we would do the work on the tree.
Is that the case in the tree that's been mentioned today, in terms of?
Where he saw or might have seen, yeah, we would have to inspect. I mean, I can't.
Do we know, in fact, that we're removing the tree that he talked to the board about today?
Sorry?
The constituent talked to the board about a specific tree where, in fact, the hawks habitat there. Do you know specifically this tree he's talking about?
I do not.
Okay. All right. That's what I was trying to figure out. And I was also, secondly, trying to figure out that, in fact, even if we did remove that tree, by nature, do the habitat then pick another environment in which to operate? So I guess it's hard for us to know that answer.
Right. Well, if we saw that there were nesting birds in it, we wouldn't touch it, and we'd have to stay so many feet away from it, which may incorporate a couple of more trees that just wouldn't get done until the nesting season's over.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Jacinto?
Thank you. Colleagues, I appreciate the citizen testimony as well as our due diligence that we have to do, because anytime we take trees out of the public right away, that's a big thing for our ecosystem. Tim, the grevilleas, the 8 that are being removed, are they being replaced by the same species?
That I'm not sure. I don't believe we're planting any grevilleas. It's not a tree that we really plant anymore today because they're not friendly trees. They have a lot of upper crown problems and things like this. There's a lot of trees that were planted many years ago that we don't plant today.
Okay, understood. So we want to be moving forward in terms of, is there citizen participation in terms of selection of those trees? Are we consulting in the course of the neighborhood meetings, or
Yes.
are we doing that unilaterally?
Yes, there was citizen collaboration on the replants.
On the replanting of those 8 or 16 or whatever that goes
All trees that will be replanted.
into that area, because I think for neighborhood preservation and local kind of indigenous landscapes, that's very important. That defines, and as much as we could balance that, and maybe we're creating a new palette of trees for the next generations.
Right.
And that's a good thing too.
Yes.
So I don't mind this. I just want to have that confirmation that we did work with the citizens on the palette of trees to be planted in the future.
We did.
All right. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Anything further? I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 6. Is there a second by Commissioners Jacinto and Davis? Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 6. Any issue sending 6 forthwith? We'll send 6 forthwith. Mr. Barkloff, thank you, as well as Mr. Castellanos, Mr. Tyson. Agenda item number 3. I believe we're back on number 3. Supplemental agreement and change orders in Council District 4. Green Building Corporation, Los Angeles, Glendale Water Reclamation Plant Pond Membrane Liner Project. This is to authorize the city engineer to issue a supplemental agreement and final closeout change order to Green Building Corporation for a not-to-exceed amount of $90,000 to compensate the contractor for additional contract time extension. Sean Zahedi, you'll let us know what resulted in the additional work needed to be done by the contractor.
Good morning. Sean Zahedi, Bureau of Engineering. I also have Mike Ruiz of Bureau of Sanitation's Water Reclamation Division here. The project is the Los Angeles Glendale Water Reclamation Plant Pond Membrane Liner pond membrane liner repair, and we are requesting the board to authorize an additional $90,000 in contingency and approve a revised construction budget of $2,183,750. We further request authorization from the board to the city engineer to issue supplemental agreement for the final closeout change order to Green Building for a not-to-exceed amount of $90,000 to compensate the contractor for delays and time extensions. Your board awarded this contract in March of 2015, the amount of $1,675,000 with a 10% contingency. The project, very briefly, does two things. One is that it lines a pipeline that brings the water to the pond with a cast-in-place plastic liner. And the second part of the project was to regrade the pond and install a plastic liner for the pond to prevent the water from seeping through to the ground. So that was essentially the scope of the project. After construction started, let me back up, I'm sorry. The intent was that the existing 12-inch layer of clay that is at the bottom of the pond that served initially as the impervious layer, that it could be salvaged. So the intent was to go in, make repairs to the clay layer, and in addition to that, install a plastic liner on top of the clay. That was the design of the project. Once we got into construction, we realized that the clay layer is beyond repair. It's been infiltrated by a lot of silt, and it can't be salvaged. So at that time, the only solution was to install a double plastic liner. And we came to the board in November of 2015 requesting additional funds to increase the contingency by $250,520 to do this double liner. So that request was actually, it took a big hit. The contingency took a big hit as a result of that particular request at that time. So we reached 15% of the contract value with the design change. Now we have finished the project, and there were some issues during construction with the lining of the pipe and other design issues that caused a delay in the project completion. We were originally supposed to finish in July of 2016, and it took actually until January of this year for the contractor to demobilize. So this $90,000 that we're requesting is to compensate the contractor for the time extension. Since we are exceeding the 25% limit for the change orders, that necessitates the supplemental agreement. The contractor acknowledges that executing the supplemental agreement change order, there will be no adjustment to the contract unit prices as a result. And we will issue the final closeout change order for a credit for some of the allowance items that weren't used. So there will be a $14,000 credit with the final closeout change order. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Sento?
Thank you. Sean, so the unforeseen conditions of the clay originally that required, the first batch of change orders where we went over 15%, in fact, almost 25%, was really the reason why the whole project has been, over almost 30% in terms of over the original contract. Is that where we're at? We're pretty much going to complete it with this?
Yeah, the contractor is finished, and they have demobilized as of January of this year. So we have accepted the project, and so that is where it will end.
Understood. So based on that unforeseen conditions, I think it's acceptable that it is, although we don't like to go over obviously 25% or even 10% in terms of a
Right.
contract contingency, so,
That's correct.
yeah. All right, Sean, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion on agenda item number 3 by Commissioner Jacinto, seconded by Commissioner Davis? Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 3. We can send number 3 forthwith. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 4, Council District 11, Bureau of Sanitation, change order numbers 67 and 78, Honeywell International Incorporated, Los Angeles Wastewater Control System Replacement Program, recommending that the board do 2 things. 1, authorize the director of the Bureau of Sanitation or his designee to issue a deductive change order number 67 in the amount of $300,038.27. And secondly, authorize the director of the Bureau of Sanitation to issue change order number 78 in the amount of $373,692.75 to Honeywell International for the Hyperion Treatment Segment of the Los Angeles Wastewater Control System Replacement Program, also referred to as the Los Angeles Wastewater Integrated Network System. Sam Alavi.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners, Bureau reps from CONAD and City Attorney's Office and Executive Office. My name is Sam Alavi. I'm with the Bureau of Sanitation regarding the 2 change orders for LA Wins, the contract that we have, long-term contract we have with Honeywell. There are change order number 67 is the deductive change order because there was a digester, old digesters that was replaced by the newer egg-shaped digester, which is providing the Class A biosolids. And so the plant management decided they don't need that digester B, the old digester B, and their associated DPUs and the 237 input-output points associated with that no longer needed. So there was a credit of $300,000 that we agreed with the contractor back to the city. Now, the change order number 78 is for some additional fiber optic conduits that had to be constructed. Now, there were a number of RFIs, requests for information, by the contractor Honeywell, that they requested to use the existing conduits per contract. Now, sometimes we cannot allow that because there's a potential for damage to the existing fibers. And so based on our negotiation, they agreed to basically do the new conduits and not to use the existing fiber optic conduits that has some capacity, but there's some issues and danger that they might damage the existing conduit fiber. So we just agreed to pay for the portion of the conduit that was concrete encasement, and that was for a total of 370,000. So the net would be 73,000. Change order for 73,000. That's the net.
Thank you. Anything on number 4, Commissioner Penning?
So these are unrelated, correct? I mean, they're part of this, the deductive and the change order.
Yes. There's one deductive and one addition.
Because we've seen on this project before where we've had a deductive change order because we're purchasing something else for that same function, but that's not what's happening here, correct?
Right. This is the digester batteries that was in the old scope, but because it was the scope was made sometime in 2009.
So
and
the deductive
since that
change
time, there
order
were
is
some changes.
for something, a technology that's no longer needed because we've
Right.
already surpassed that technology in terms of
Exactly. We had to
treatment of
replace all the
biosolids.
digesters with the newer technology.
But the change order is for new technology that's needed because the specs or the needs that our system has evolved since the time that the original scope was.
Exactly. To produce the Class A biosolids, we had new digesters, and the old ones was no longer needed. It's abandoned, basically.
In terms of change order 78.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm talking about the fiber
the
optic.
addition, that was basically, we had requested, we required the contractor to build the new conduits and not use the existing conduits.
Okay, and the reason that this is needed is because we can't use existing conduits.
Right, because the potential of damaging, while they pull their cables, there's a potential to damage the existing fiber optic cables.
Okay. Anything else? Commissioner Davis?
The change order 67, what's the company we're dealing with in 67? What's the name of that company?
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
I beg your pardon?
What was this?
What is the company for change order 67? What is the company we're dealing with in that?
The company?
Uh-huh.
It's Honeywell. Honeywell.
Honeywell. And then what is the company that we're dealing with in change order 78?
Also the same contractor.
Still Honeywell.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything further? Is there a motion, Commissioner Penning? I'll second it. On number 4, any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 4. Any issue sending number 4 forthwith? We'll send number 4 forthwith.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Agenda item number 5. Bureau of Sanitation still. Amendment number 1 to task order A316-05 Oracle Customer Care and Billing Support with Inflection Point Solutions, recommending that the board first authorize the director of the Bureau of Sanitation or his designee to amend the existing project task order A3-16-05 Oracle Customer Care and Billing Support with Inflection Point Solutions. The estimated cost ceiling will increase $300,000 from $349,960 to $649,960. Anita Fernandez. So you'll tell us what we're doing with the additional $300K here?
Yes, I will. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Bureau representatives, Mr. City Attorney, and Mr. Assistant Executive Officer. My name is Anita Fernandez with the Bureau of Sanitation. And I'd like to start out just by giving a little background on this project. As you may be aware, DWP is the billing agent for LA Sanitation sewer service charges and other related fees for the solid waste program. In September of 2013, DWP switched from their old mainframe customer information management system to a modern customer care and billing system, CCMB. Since then, various problems and issues have been encountered with the new CCMB. To address these issues related to LA Sanitation specifically, we issued a task order solicitation to 6 consulting firms on our pre-qualified list of consultants for automation and technology. Inflection Point Solutions was selected and issued a project task order on November 23, 2016. The original cost ceiling was $349,960. LA Sanitation is requesting the board to increase the cost ceiling for an additional $300,000 to a total cost of $649,960. The WBE percentage is 75.2%, as well as the SBE percentage is also 75.2%. So far, the task completed to date, we have worked with the DWP to address many of the issues with the sewer service charges due to the migration of the data from the database, from the old mainframe database to the current system. We've also developed code that helps us to pull data from the CCMB that we use to perform annual data analysis and other reporting services. DWP used to provide this service to us prior to the new billing system, but now we are currently taking over that role, and this consultant has helped us to do that. So some of the ongoing tasks that this consultant has helped us to perform are regular reports and data analysis to proactively help to identify and mitigate billing issues. He is also helping to assist and streamline the generation of monthly reports, which LA Sanitation staff uses for planning, billing, and budgetary purposes. So with this amendment, we are obviously going to continue with addressing these proactive tasks and reports. We're going to attempt to simplify the process of pulling data from CCMB, possibly automating that process, and reducing the time it takes to switch between systems to get information in one concise picture. We also will work with DWP and LA Sanitation to establish data validation rules to help prevent future occurrences of identified billing issues. And most importantly, we're planning on a knowledge transfer. The CCMB billing system is very complex, so we are hoping to be able to accomplish that within this amendment time. But like I said, it's very complex, and so we're planning to, or hoping to, have our technical and financial staff to take over these issues with some of the automation that this contract amendment will help us perform. And then just to go over why an amendment is being done at this point rather than issuing another task order solicitation. First of all, for the obvious reason that another task order solicitation would take a significant amount of time to process, and even if we did, it would likely not find anyone with the same level of expertise and knowledge as our existing consultant has gained so far. And they have gained a tremendous amount of knowledge and expertise with our data also. The learning curve for a new consultant would be very lengthy and would not be economically beneficial to the city. And as an added benefit, our current consultant, Rice Consulting, who is working as a sub under IPS, Inflection Point Solutions, they are a trusted consultant of DWP. So they have actually higher level of privileges with the CCMB system than our current staff does. So we're in the process of transitioning that to sanitation staff so that we can have that same level of authority. So therefore, we respectfully ask for authority to issue this amendment, number 1, to Project Task Order A3-1605 for the customer care and billing system support.
Thank you, Ms. Fernandez, for the record you made for us. It's helpful. Commissioner Repenning?
Hi, Anita. I just wanted to, we talked about this request and why it didn't make sense to go back out to the list, for example, in that most of the work is being done by a sub. So 75% I see is
correct,
which is a WBE and an SBE. That company has plays a very important role in our kind of liaison work with the Department of Water and Power in handling some fairly sensitive records related to billing, customer care.
Correct.
And so, insofar as this work is fairly important, we're not at the point where we would want to pull them out and.
Right, we're now working with DWP to establish that same type of rapport with them as our consultant has. So.
Okay. And the deliverables from this amendment are?
The deliverables from this amendment? Basically, I guess I can answer, the ongoing tasks that we're currently performing, the data reconciliation and analysis of the data, the reporting, those will all be continued in this, so that will be deliverables. And we also hope to get an automated process for pulling the data from DWP. And Eva mentioned to me that we're actually building a portal so that we have a view into the CCMB data for our customer care representatives and our financial people to help so that they don't have to go to different systems to view the data that's needed for reconciling the bills.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Penning. Commissioner Davis?
I just wanted to say that I'm very pleased that we were fortunate enough to end up being able to have in this case, and it doesn't always happen when we're looking for expertise, that we were able to include a woman-owned business. Often we've spoken about that in our vision for diversity, so I'm very glad to see that that has occurred.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jacinto?
Thank you. Anita, just for the record, how many customers, how big is our customer base in that CCMB system?
That would I have to get to Eva.
I believe we have more than, Eva Sung from Sanitation. We have more than 1 million customers, yes.
So it's a large, it is our entire customer base for
Right,
for LA
for
San in
both
terms?
the solid resources customers as well as the SSC fee customers. Yes.
All right, so that's a significant volume of accounts. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cento. Anything further? Is there a motion on number 5 by Commissioner Repenning, seconded by Commissioner Cento? Any objection? With that objection, we will adopt agenda item number 5. Any problem sending it forthwith? We'll send number 5 forthwith. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's do agenda items 9, 10, and 11. They're all from the Office of Community Beautification. Contract amendments for 2017-18 graffiti removal is number 9. Recommending that the board authorize OCB to execute amendments to the contracts for a continuation of services in fiscal year 17-18 as listed. A, Central City Action Committee in the amount of $695,000 for graffiti removal services in portions of CDs 1 and 13. B, Coalition for Responsible Community Development in the amount of $795,000 for graffiti removal services in portions of Council District 9. C is Gang Alternatives Program in the amount of $1,863,000 for graffiti removal services in CD 15, portions of CDs 8, 9, and 14, and UNTAG Untagged Strike Force Services. D, Graffiti Control Systems in the amount of $250,000 for the Untagged Strike Force Services. E, Graffiti Control Systems in the amount of $75,000 for specialty graffiti removal services. And F, Hollywood Beautification Team in the amount of $715,000 for graffiti removal services in portions of Council Districts 4, 5, and 13. Koreatown Youth and Community Center in the amount of $640,000 for graffiti removal services in portions of CDs 1 and 10. Los Angeles Conservation Corps in the amount of $595,000 for graffiti removal services in portions of CD 8. New Directions for Youth in the amount of $490,000 for graffiti removal services in portions of CDs 2 and 4. Northeast Graffiti Removal Busters in the amount of $1,365,000 for graffiti removal services in portions of 1, 2, 6, 7, and 14. Pacific Graffiti Solutions in the amount of $640,000 for graffiti removal services in CDs 5 and 11. Silmar Graffiti Busters in the amount of $208,000 for graffiti removal services in portions of CDs 7 and 12. Sun Valley Area Chamber of Commerce in the amount of $338,000 for graffiti removal services in portions of CD 2 and 6. West Valley Alliance in the amount of $650,000 for graffiti removal services in CD 3 and portions of CD 12, 2, and 6. Mr. Roch, you'll describe what we're doing here.
Good morning, Paul Roch, Director of the Office of Community Beautification. And we are requesting board approval to renew existing contracts with various nonprofit community-based organizations to provide graffiti abatement services in fiscal year 2017-18. These contractors respond to requests for service both proactively removing graffiti and also responding to various requests that are submitted to the city. In the past fiscal year, 2016-17, OCB contractors removed 32.3 million square feet of graffiti. This represents a 15% increase from the previous year when 27.5 million square feet of graffiti was removed. These contractors responded to 131,694 requests for graffiti abatement services, which was actually a slight decrease from the previous year when OCB responded to an all-time high of over 133,000 graffiti abatement requests. But this amount of 131,000 was still the second highest amount of requests we've ever received for graffiti abatement. 24,000 of the requests were submitted through someone calling 311. 60,000 of the requests were submitted using the MyLA mobile app on their phones. 45,000 requests were submitted by someone filling out the online request form, and just kind of showing how far technology has come. 29 requests were submitted by a fax machine. And, you know, I remember when fax used to be the top of the line technology movement, and we still had 29 that came in through fax. Approximately 63% of the requests were completed within a day of the request being made. This budget provides
funding for 13 additional crews, pretty much on a citywide basis, with the goal of getting close to 90% of our requests completed within a day of the request being submitted. And then finally, we're also asking approval in there. Bureau of Street Services would like to piggyback on one of the contracts with graffiti
Yeah, I
control
neglected
systems.
to read that into the record. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, go ahead,
yeah,
Paul.
Yeah, for graffiti abatement in some of the tunnels. There are 5 tunnels that Bureau of Street Services utilizes graffiti control systems for. The 2nd Street Tunnel, 3rd Street Tunnel, the one out by the Van Nuys Airport, and a couple out in West LA. And then finally, also Department of Transportation is requesting to piggyback on the LA Conservation Corps for the installation of bike racks. LACC has installed over 2,000 bike racks now on a citywide basis, utilizing one of the OCB contracts.
Thank you. So what Mr. Rochester, I'm not going to read it back into the record. I neglected to read that into the record from the agenda sheet on the bike racks and the 5 street tunnels. So since he did it, I'm not going to do it in the interest of time. Although I would say that we're also authorizing, this would also authorize myself or 2 members of the board to execute contract amendments once approval as to form has been obtained by the city attorney. And the contract numbers are listed in the agenda sheet as well. Commissioner Repenning on number 9.
So the increase in funding is tied to a response rate of 90% graffiti request removal within 24 hours, correct?
Yes, that was the goal of the mayor's office. They had asked us originally, when we were going through the budget process, our estimated cost on what we thought that would be. We gave an estimated cost of an additional $2 million. We received an extra $1,250,000. So it came up a little short, so I think we'll get close to 90%. Maybe we'll get to 90%, but even if we fall a little short, I feel like, well, we didn't get quite what we asked for, so, I mean, there's a justifiable reason if that happens. But it'll be a continual balance between chasing after requests and the proactive work of, just getting graffiti removed, whether somebody actually requested it or not. And so that's the continual balance.
Right, and that other work, which is obviously critically important, because our contractors, they know the hot spots, they know the areas that get hit over and over again, and so they go out and check them regardless of whether there's a request that's been received. So continuing that work and making sure that work is attached to data so that, what we're showing is not just our response time, to requests, but actually the full
how much we've actually removed.
Range of services that are being provided, I think is important. Well, good luck. It sounds exciting. I think it's great that the administration has chosen to kind of focus on graffiti as an area for expanded services, and look forward to seeing what the Office of Community Beautification is able to do with the additional resources.
Me too.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Commissioner Rivas?
No, thank you, Paul. It's great to see contractors. I've been fortunate to meet with them at one of your monthly staff meetings, and that we're adding 13 additional crews. How does that break down, the 13 crews? Is it one additional crew per contractor?
No,
or is
not
it
necessarily,
based on need?
because we kind of looked at where the requests are coming from, and kind of maybe gave a couple more. Some contractors got 2. We had a couple contractors that are doing fine on keeping up with the requests, just because they tend to get fewer requests maybe in their areas, and so we didn't put crews in those particular areas. I think there were just 2 or maybe 3 contractors that didn't get an additional crew, And then, there's some that got 2. So some of our larger contractors that work, like Gang Alternatives Program, which does CD14, CD8, CD15, and then also the downtown area. They're our largest contractor, so they got 2 additional crews. So,
And in your opinion, do you think the number of contractors we have is enough? Like, are they able to handle the extra capacity to meet this goal of 90%? Or do you think you need to add more organizations?
Well, I think it is enough. I mean, the more organizations we add, then at some point you start getting more of that administrative burden, renting more space, helping pay, for more executive director salaries and things like that. So I think it works out right now where, it's a good number. If we just had 2, or 3, it'd be so huge an area for them to try to maintain. That would be difficult. But obviously, if you start getting smaller and smaller, maybe, the work would be a little better, but the cost would probably go up because of the administrative overhead.
And like the overhead costs go up as you increase contractors.
Right.
That makes sense. Okay, it was great also to hear where the requests are coming from, and I'm excited that more are coming in through the app, My LA 311 app, which usually I hear that when I'm in the community that people don't use the app for this.
Right.
But it's great to see that
But
it is
it's,
increasing.
yeah,
It seems like it's increasing.
it's just every year has gradually gone up, and I think 2 years ago it was about 50-50, and last year was the first year where the mobile app slightly overtook people calling 311, and now this year it's, almost 2 to 1, so.
Thank you.
Paul, I wanted to ask, in terms of the technology and removal of graffiti, are there new tools that the vendors are now using that helps to expedite the removal of graffiti much more quicker than we used to in the past?
Well, for the most part, the various ways that they remove graffiti are still the same, whether it's paint removal, chemical removal, or high-pressure water blasting. Chemical removal, there are new chemicals that are always coming out that promise to be more effective or more safe for the environment, and we're always looking at those and doing tests and stuff like that, and if we find something that is cost-effective and works even better than what we're using now or is more environmentally safe, then we do work to try to get that on contract with the city so that we're able to purchase it for the contractors. Probably the newest technologies that are coming out are more in terms of protective coatings and things like that for murals or for walls that you don't want to paint over. There are some good ones out there, but they're pricey, and that's always the trade-off is, everything's, the quickest and easiest way to get graffiti removed is just paint it over, use a matching color of paint, and then move on to the next wall or next location. So although there are some good products out there, they tend to cost a lot more money than the old-fashioned way of just painting it out.
In terms of reporting, have we discovered a change in the pattern of reporting of constituents? Have they now begun to do self-reporting, in other words, through the 311 app, through faxing, maybe for some seniors, or are they consistently going to council offices to report? I mean, do we have have we noticed a pattern, a change in pattern of the reporting?
Well, the main change in pattern is that they're now using the mobile app more and more. That's the main thing. And also submitting them online. I mean, we had 45,000 requests that somebody actually sat down, went to the city's website, and reported it online that way, as opposed to only 24,000 people actually picking up the phone, talking to an operator, and having it submitted. So we're seeing that more and more people are doing it themselves, whether it's either, just through the city's website or through the mobile app. That seems to be the trend.
Great. Well, I'm so glad that we are remaining strong in service delivery of graffiti removal. Obviously, all of our city leaders care very deeply about our ability to be able to remove this graffiti, and so I'm very glad to see that administratively this is one of your top priorities, and that more importantly, you are able to get the resources to keep up with the increase of the service delivery. So I thank you for what you're doing in this area.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jacinto.
Thank you. Paul, thank you for your leadership on OCB and working with our contractors and all the other staff in the OCB family. You know, coming from the nonprofit sector, I'm so happy to see all that we're increasing the work, we're increasing the jobs that we're given, the contracts, because those translate into jobs for nonprofits. And you know, in the nonprofit world, we have a little, probably less of an administrative class, and can give more jobs to more diverse residents of our city. So I see on 9, 10, and 11 that we have an increase, and I'll make this request at some point in time in the future. If we could do a study on, you know, all our different contracts for OCB, how does that translate in number of jobs to nonprofits and to individuals who come from neighborhoods that we serve? Would be great at some point in the future if you could do that, Paul. But thank you so much.
We have that information, so we can easily get it together and get a report.
Very good. All right. Thanks, Paul.
Think anything further? Thank you, Paul, for helping me wrap up what needed to be put in the record there. I thought you thought, wait a minute, I've got to have more than what Commissioner James put in the record, so I'll just add it. It is in the agenda. I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 9, seconded by Commissioners Rivas and Davis. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 9. Any issue sending 9 forthwith? We'll send number 9 forthwith. Number 10. Contract Amendments 2017-18 Clean Streets LA Program. Recommending that the board first authorize the Office of Community Beautification, subject to transfer and appropriation of funding, to execute the following amendments. A, Coalition for Responsible Community Development in the amount of $100,000 to provide public right-of-way cleanup services in South Los Angeles or as designated by OCB. B, Gang Alternatives Program in the amount of $190,000 to provide public right-of-way cleanup services in Harbor East, South Los Angeles, or as designated by OCB. C, Hollywood Beautification Team in the amount of $75,000 to provide public right-of-way cleanup services in Central Los Angeles, or as designated by OCB. D, Koreatown Youth and Community Center in the amount of $85,000 to provide public right-of-way cleanup services in Central and South Los Angeles, or as designated by OCB. E, Los Angeles Conservation Corps in the amount of $125,000 to provide public right-of-way cleanup services in South and Central Los Angeles, or as designated by OCB. F, New Directions for Youth in the amount of $80,000 to provide public right-of-way cleanup services for the Northeast San Fernando Valley, or as designated by OCB. G, Pacific Graffiti Solutions in the amount of $65,000 to provide public right-of-way cleanup services in West Los Angeles, or as designated by OCB. H, Silmar Graffiti Busters in the amount of $45,000 to provide public right-of-way cleanup services in the West San Fernando Valley, East San Fernando Valley, or as designated by OCB. I, Sun Valley Area Chamber of Commerce in the amount of $70,000 to provide public right-of-way cleanup services in the East San Fernando Valley, or as designated by OCB. And J, West Valley Alliance in the amount of $65,000 to provide public right-of-way cleanup services in the West San Fernando Valley, or as designated by OCB. Secondly, authorize the Director of the Office of Accounting to appropriate the funds for the above amendments upon transfer of funding from the Bureau of Sanitation to the Board of Public Works. And 3, authorize myself or 2 members of the Board to execute the contract amendments after approval as to form has been obtained by the City Attorney. The contract numbers are listed in the agenda notice. Mr. Roch on number 10.
Paul Roch, Director of the Office of Community Beautification. So most of the contractors that we utilize for graffiti abatement are now also contracted to supplement the work of the Bureau of Sanitation through the Clean Streets Los Angeles program. These contractors perform weed abatement, litter cleanup, and various other cleanup work as directed by the council offices, by Bureau of Sanitation, by the Office of Community Beautification. They work citywide. They're a little bit fewer boundaries than with graffiti removal, where they have a very specific boundaries that they follow. But this one, we kind of send them in their generalized areas where we know the work is, where we know there might be a lot of requests or something like that. So LA Conservation Corps might be sent over to the east side if we have a lot of problems over there, or vice versa. We might send our contractor from that side down to South LA just to kind of help supplement the work and wherever the requests are coming from. The final numbers for the past fiscal year have not been fully documented in the MyLA 311 system as of yet. We still have 392 locations that were completed but have not been closed in the system at this point, and so we're not able to pull up our final numbers. But what we have so far is OCB contractors cleaned over 6,000 locations of weeds, litter, and trash, collected over 104,000 trash bags, and over 19,000 bulky items from along the public right-of-way.
Thank you, Commissioner Penning.
The original idea behind this funding for the Office of Community Beautification was to help supplement the services that sanitation provides in terms of the Clean Streets crews, which can handle, fairly heavy cleanup, fairly intensive work. They're comprised of different sorts of workers, different sorts of vehicles. So they can go out and clean an entire alley and handle everything in the alley. They also increasingly have been taking on homeless encampments. Meanwhile, your folks are more nimble. They are, they tend to have less equipment, but they can kind of get out there more easily. And so they're handling light, bulky items, street litter, and weeds.
Right.
Have you seen a decrease in litter as we've put out the new ALBs?
I mean, I can't say I have or I haven't. In certain parts of the city, and obviously, where I live in Northeast LA, I kind of tend to be in those areas more. Obviously the litter is still out there and the weeds are still out there and stuff like that. But I would say that there's maybe a slight decrease that's noticeable. But I think it's one of those things where if it's not there, you just don't really think about it. But if it's there, then it sees you and makes that impact. Same thing as like graffiti. If people never see the problem because somebody's come and picked it up or somebody actually, threw their trash in a receptacle, you never really maybe think about it as much as when you do see it laying on the street or something. But.
And then in terms of weed abatement, I know, we had a really rainy winter, and so I now it's like the dead of summer, so things are probably drying up.
Yep.
But I know for a while it seemed like the weeds were kind of poking out of everywhere, and then we had the issue with the medians and street services, which kind of exacerbated the visual. Are you still, in terms of weed abatement, is that something that you're seeing more of due to the rains?
Yeah. Even though, there's probably not as many new weeds poking up, there's still, and like you say, they're now all dried out and stuff like that. I see weeds everywhere. That's probably what I focus on more or something like that, just for whatever reason. I tend to see a lot of weeds that are out there, and we have told our contractors really to give that a high priority as they're looking for locations to do, because in a lot of cases, a particular contractor might get 6 or 7 requests from the council office or Bureau of Sanitation, and that'll keep them busy for a week or something, and then maybe they'll have 2 or 3 weeks where they don't have any requests, and they're just proactively out there looking for work to perform.
So are you saying that you guys are going to get into the weeds with this new funding?
Yeah, I'm saying we've been in the weeds and we're going to stay in the weeds.
It's Monday morning.
We've been in the weeds and we're staying in the weeds. That's a big focus of it. Yep.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Anything, Commissioner Rivas?
how does this work get assigned to the contractors? Or are they certain areas
Well,
that they're?
yeah, so I mean, obviously, they do have certain areas. We're not going to maybe send one of our valley contractors down to do something in the harbor area or something like that. But all the public right-of-way cleanups that are assigned through Mile A311 first come to OCB. So that's a little different from the graffiti where, you know, somebody submits something and it directly goes to a particular contractor. So within our office, we both look at how many requests a particular contractor might have. If somebody's backed up with 20 or 25 requests and a neighboring contractor maybe only has 1 or 2, we might assign it to them even though they might be a little further away from where that particular request is. But generally speaking, you know, if there's something on the west side, we're going to give it to the west side contractor. But then also, obviously, LA Conservation Corps, which is kind of a little bit more citywide and very centrally located, we do kind of use them a lot as a wild card, and they can go to the east side or go to the west side or down south, you know, as requests might be piling up. But basically, OCB gets the requests and we assign them out to those contractors.
But these are 311 requests that in these types of contracts?
No, these are not submitted through 311. The requests will either come from a council office or from the Bureau of Sanitation or from OCB.
Yeah, because I recently submitted like a weed abatement near me, where I live in my alley, and it came back. There was no option in 311 to do that.
Right.
And then I talked to someone in your office about it, and she told me, "Oh, you can just call us." And so I just didn't know, as a resident, how to report.
It's not an option where people can call in and, you know, request a litter cleanup on this corner, weed abatement on that corner, something like that. Just because, I mean, you know, then they would be totally inundated with requests and we'd never really be able to prioritize or get things out there. So we really are depending on a couple different routes which is basically through Bureau of Sanitation when they're out there at a particular area and they've done the big cleanup work in the alley, and now there's maybe just weeds or light trash left behind. They'll submit a request. Or council offices, knowing where, you know, somebody maybe has called the council office and said, hey, can you guys take care of the weeds, you know, on this corner or something? And they'll put in a request, or same thing through OCB. Sometimes people call us, or we see stuff when we're out there driving around, and we'll submit requests as well.
So these contracts for this item mainly are requests that are coming internally.
Internally, right. Or the contractors are proactively doing work if they don't have a backlog of
identified
requests.
By them. Yep. Okay. Yeah, on my way to work this morning, I saw KYCC out.
Oh, good.
And they were doing what seemed to be like litter and
probably was,
cleanup.
yeah.
So
they try to get out there early before traffic gets too bad and before it gets too hot. So
yeah, I really appreciate the work that the contractors do, and I noticed that this is adding, 23 and a half jobs, right? Yep. So this particular item, so thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Is there a motion on number 10 by Commissioner Rivas? Seconded by Commissioner Cento. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 10. Any issue sending 10 forthwith? We will send 10 forthwith. Paul, I hope your legs aren't getting tired there because you're here for... Yeah, by the time I read them, you get a few minutes break, right? This one's not as long, though. Council District, well, this is all citywide. Contract Amendment Clean and Green Jobs Program, recommending that the board first authorize the Office of Community Beautification, subject to transfer and appropriation, to execute a contract amendment with the Los Angeles Conservation Corps in the amount of $1,751,000 to fund the Clean and Green Program during fiscal year 2017-18. Secondly, authorize the Director of the Office of Accounting to appropriate funds for the above amendment upon transfer of funding from the General City Purposes Fund to the Board of Public Works. And third, authorize myself or 2 members of the Board of Public Works to execute the contract amendment after approval as to form has been obtained by the City Attorney. Mr. Roch on number 11.
Paul Roch, Office of Community Beautification, requesting board approval to amend the contract with the LA Conservation Corps for the operation of the Clean and Green youth hiring program. This program hires between 400 to 500 LA area youth each year to provide various cleanup and beautification services citywide. The youth are between the ages of 13 to 17 and typically attend LA Unified School District schools. In addition to the cleanup work, they're taught various types of job skills and other lessons that they will carry with them throughout their lives. The total funding for Clean and Green is $1,751,000. $1 million of that is provided via the Bureau of Sanitation through the general city purposes portion of the budget, and $751,000 is provided by the Office of Community Beautification budget. Typical work performed by these youth include alley cleanup, tree planting, tree watering, litter abatement, public outreach, recycling, and a lot of other as needed types of services. I think that probably almost any special event you go to in the city, you'll typically see a group of Clean and Green students sitting off to the side because they've been helping set up or will help with the cleanup and serving or whatever is needed. So again, we do request board approval for this agenda item as well.
Any questions on agenda item number 11? Commissioner Rivas.
I have a question, but I was in Clean and Green when I was 14, so I'm very excited to be approving this item or in support of it. Like you said, I know the program has changed a lot since then, but I still, pass by alleys and streets and weeds that we took out. I mean, I was 14 and learned to use these tools, and it was in the valley, so it was very hot that summer. So I still have a lot of memories of being at Clean and Green and wearing that green hard hat, and it just really helped me buy clothes. I was entering high school, and I was able to buy my own first day of school clothes, because otherwise I wouldn't have as much as I needed. So I really appreciate what this program does for the youth, and now has evolved into more job skills training, and just
Right.
very excited, especially for this age range. When you're 14, it's hard to get a job, and I'm glad that they target this age range too.
Yep, and I mean, they do a great job of working with the kids and making sure that they stay in school, or for some of the kids that have dropped out of their regular high school for whatever reason, LA Conservation Corps runs their own high school classes to help those kids still get their diplomas. And one of the most enjoyable days I ever have every year, and I hope some of you have had the opportunity or will, when LA Conservation Corps does their annual awards ceremony, usually in the spring, and brings a lot of those kids and their stories with them, and they're able to speak about it. And it does really make a difference. You realize, by providing these funds and stuff, what it really does mean to kids throughout the city of Los Angeles. So.
Thank you. Anything further? Was that a motion, Commissioner Rivas? Is there a second? Seconded by everybody else here based on Commissioner Rivas' story. So that'll be the order. Any issues, sending it forthwith? We'll send number 11 forthwith. We have one remaining. Thank you, Mr. Roch, for your marathon today. You're all squared away for a while. Agenda item, yes. Agenda item number 7. Let me find we still have number 7 left. A tree removal in Council District 1310 through 1322 North Cole Avenue, recommending that the board certify the board has reviewed and considered the information in the final environmental impact report for the new 7-story mixed-use commercial building located at 1310 through 1332 North Cole Avenue, and find the information contained therein appropriately addresses the requested tree removals. Secondly, find that the project will not have a significant environmental effect under the above described final environmental impact report, as the imposition of the mitigation measures described in the EIR, and incorporated herein as project conditions, such that there is no substantial evidence the proposed project will have a significant effect on the environment pursuant to the city's environmental guidelines and is in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act. 3, find the project's conflict with any local policies or ordinances protecting biological resources, such as tree preservation policies, or ordinances is less than significant with the incorporation of mitigation measures under biological resources MMTR2 as contained in the EIR. 4th, adopt the state clearinghouse final environmental impact report. 5th, specify that the Bureau of Street Services, Urban Forestry Division, located at 1149 South Broadway, is custodian of the documents or other material that constitute the record of proceedings upon which the board's decision is based. And 6, approve the request for a fee tree removal permit for the removal of 8 Mexican fan palm trees. Tree replacements are required. Mr. Tyson on number 7.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The Rescore Hollywood LLC, Limited Liability Corporation, are constructing a new 7-story mixed-use residential and commercial building located at 1310 through 1332 North Cole Avenue. The project property is triangular in shape, bounded by Cahuenga Boulevard to the east and Fountain Avenue to the south. The development will consist of 369 residential units and 2,570 square feet of commercial space. The project will include 20 units for moderate income households and 2 subterranean levels with 589 parking spaces. The project would involve the demolition of the existing structures and construction of a new 7-story residential mixed-use building ranging from approximately 82 to 110 feet in height. As part of the project, the developer is proposing to vacate Homewood Avenue, a small east to west street between Cole Avenue and Cahuenga Boulevard. The street vacation will allow construction of the proposed new 7-story mixed-use residential and commercial building as planned. The street vacation will require the removal of the 8 street trees. Ms. Linda Liu, property owner representative, contacted the Bureau of Street Services regarding the project intention to remove 8 street trees in the right-of-way. In response, the Bureau arborist inspected the subject location on July 26, 2016. The inspection revealed 8 Mexican fan palms growing on the Homewood Avenue side. The trees are in fair health, measuring an average of 20 inches in diameter by 50 feet in height and are growing in a 5-foot parkway. The subject trees will be in the direct footprint of the proposed development and will require removal. Marisol Rodriguez, District Director, 13th Council District Office, was informed of the tree removal request on December 15, 2016. Public comments on this tree removal request will be received and heard both in writing and in person during the scheduled public hearing with the board. Notice of the proposed tree removals were physically posted on the subject trees on July 26, 2016. Proposed tree removals were included in the Bureau of Street Services tree removal notification system, and the Community Forest Advisory Committee was notified. This is on a B permit. There was a motion through the gangs and public about the vacation that was adopted on January 25th, 2015. They had all their outside meetings due to it being a B permit with everyone, and so we're at a point now where the development's ready to move forward. We are in agreement with the EIR and the final EIR, which outlined the trees. Relocating the trees would not be a good idea, as there's too many. If it was maybe 1 or 2, we might consider relocating the trees. The perimeter of the property has crepe myrtle trees that are planted in the streets on Cole and Cahuenga. So therefore, we're going to match the uniform planting that's there, and the trees that will be replanted are the crepe myrtle variety of 16 or more. If they have more room on the property, they'll plant more. And there's 56 trees that are 1-to-1 basis for city planning on the private property side that city planning will have to see about them replacing on a one-to-one basis on the private property. If they want to utilize spots in the city right-of-way for some of those plantings, we'll allow that too.
Any questions, Commissioner Rapang?
So there 369 new units. That's a lot of housing, which I suppose we need. My question is, I'm sure that the planning department is also requiring a number of trees as part of the development. Do you know how that's being handled?
I'm actually in communication with the city planning right now about a number of things that we're trying to work through. But city planning requires the tree report, which is here in the package. And there's 56 trees that are on the private property side, which would require one-to-one replacement, as far as my understanding is, unless it's going to be dependent upon how many units and whether or not they actually have that much room on the private property portion of the property once it's built to plant all those trees. So there's 58 trees in the tree report that are on the private property sector, and there's the 8 palm trees that are on Homewood Avenue.
But we are keeping those separate, so whatever they're replacing
Correct.
through planning, our 16 that we're getting back are on top of that.
Our 16 are first, and then if there's room in the public right-of-way for any of those 58 other trees to go, then they could be planted there as well.
And if there's not room, then they can.
They're supposed to be planted within the private property sector.
Okay.
So we allow them to utilize some of the spaces in the street if, in fact, there's not room and we have more room to plant in the street.
Okay. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. And also, Tim, just confirming for the record that the environmental impact report matches up with the trees that we are authorizing the removal of in front of us this morning?
Yes, it does. We had, on the final EIR, I went through this pretty well. There was some mention, and then they actually, in the final EIR, they have in here the protected trees, which there are none, and they have the 8 palm trees that will be removed.
Okay. Anything further? I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 7. Is there a second? By Commissioner Jacinto? I can't second it as well. Commissioner Jacinto has seconded it. Any objection? Without objection, we will adopt agenda item number 7. Any issues sending 7 forthwith? We will send 7 forthwith. Thank you, Mr. Tyson. Mr. Mendoza, have we cleared the desk?
Yes, you have.
Okay, then we are adjourned. The Bureau Heads meeting is canceled. Well, we went into it already to the end of it, so we will see them next month, and we are adjourned, everyone. Thank you.